What if everything you believed to be real was an elaborate illusion designed to keep you asleep? The Matrix film isn't just a sci-fi masterpiece. It's a coded map for the greatest awakening humanity has ever faced. What the Wachowskis really did was translate into cinematic language the ancient knowledge of the law of one, the truth that we are all fragments of the same infinite consciousness, temporarily forgetful of our divine nature. The red pill isn't a metaphor, it's a real invitation. While billions remain plugged into a social matrix that drains their vital energy, a growing minority is awakening to the incredible potential of human consciousness. This is no longer a spiritual luxury, it's an evolutionary necessity. In the next few minutes, you'll discover how to use Matrix as a practical guide to hack the Matrix, transcend its limitations, and return to the unity that has always been your true nature. Just imagine that sci-fi movie you watched years ago carries a truth so profound it could completely change your perception of reality. Fascinating, isn't it? Matrix isn't just a film about humans enslaved by machines. It's a powerful modern metaphor for Plato's ancient cave myth, both revealing that reality as we know it might be an elaborate illusion. What few people realize is that both the film and Plato's myth are cinematic and philosophical expressions of the same fundamental principle found in the law of one. We're living in a matrix of consciousness, where separation is illusory and the true nature of reality remains hidden until we awaken to it. Just as the cave prisoners mistake shadows for reality, we too take three-dimensional illusions as the whole truth, ignoring that there exists a unified field of consciousness in which we all participate. The beauty of this triple analogy lies precisely in how it connects to our daily lives. When you watch the news, browse social media, or automatically accept dominant cultural beliefs, you're not much different from humans plugged into the matrix or prisoners chained in the cave. The law of one teaches us that this situation isn't accidental. It's a purposeful distortion of the infinite creator so that parts of itself, us, can experience separation and, eventually, rediscover unity through the process of awakening. Think about your daily routine. How many of your decisions are truly yours, and how many are programming absorbed from the system? That career path you chose, the political opinions you defend, the relationships you seek, are they authentic choices or merely reflections of the programming we've all received since birth? The parallel between Matrix, Plato's myth, and the law of one goes even further when we understand that they all suggest the existence of illusion controllers. In the film, they're the machines and their agents. In Plato's cave, they're the shadow manipulators. In the law of one, they're negative polarity entities that promote separation and fear as control mechanisms. The mysticism of the law of one, however, adds a cosmic perspective to this equation. These controlling forces aren't inherently evil, but serve a greater purpose in the grand game of consciousness evolution. It's like an elaborate celestial game where we temporarily forget who we are for the pleasure of rediscovering ourselves. The matrix we live in isn't a cosmic error, but an elegant spiritual development system that provides us with exactly the catalysts we need for our growth. Perhaps the most transformative aspect of this analogy is understanding that, just as Neo had the potential to manipulate the matrix after recognizing its illusory nature, the law of one affirms that we all have similar capabilities in consensual reality. Phenomena considered paranormal or supernatural are just natural abilities of beings beginning to awaken to their true nature beyond the matrix. Try this experiment. Close your eyes and imagine that all solid matter around you is actually energy vibrating at different frequencies, exactly as quantum physics shows us. This simple perspective shift already begins to hack the matrix you live in. The occult knowledge preserved by ancient traditions is nothing more than the science of reality beyond the veil of illusion, revealing that reality responds more to consciousness than to supposed immutable physical laws. What makes Matrix such a timeless film is precisely its ability to translate complex esoteric concepts into a narrative comprehensible to the masses. Similarly, the law of one simplifies understanding the multidimensional nature of reality through Concepts like densities and distortions both invite us to question, what if everything you consider real were just an elaborate construction? What if your limitations were just mental programming that can be transcended through awakening? It's interesting to note how people on different spirituality paths often report similar experiences of seeing beyond the veil, moments of enlightenment, where the illusory nature of physical reality becomes transparent, revealing the fundamental unity that the law of one proclaims. Matrix isn't just brilliant science fiction, it's a cinematic invitation to begin your journey of awakening, a call to start questioning the nature of the reality you take for granted. Wow, it's not every day that someone receives a mysterious message on their computer saying, "Wake up, Neo." However, every human being at some point in life experiences their own version of this call to awaken. That unsettling moment when something inside you begins to suspect there's more to reality than what you've been taught. In Neo's journey, this initial awakening is symbolized not just by the literal command to wake up, but also by the existential restlessness the character already felt even before meeting Morpheus. The Law of One describes this exact moment as the beginning of green ray activation, when the heart begins to open to a broader consciousness, questioning the limitations of the social matrix. It's as if something at the center of your being whispers, "This can't be all there is." This whisper, however subtle, is actually a cosmic call, the dormant part of your being gradually remembering its true nature. The symbolism of the white rabbit that Neo is instructed to follow perfectly represents what awakening masters call synchronicities, those seemingly coincidental events that appear to guide us beyond the veil of ordinary reality. In the Law of One, these synchronicities aren't chances, but communications from your higher self, the part of you that exists in a higher density and orchestrates these clues to guide your awakening. Have you noticed how, when you begin to seriously question the nature of reality, books suddenly fall into your hands, specific people cross your path, or you stumble upon information exactly when you need it? These are your own white rabbits. Try keeping a journal of these synchronicities. For a week, note any event that seems strangely significant or connected to your questioning process. You'll be surprised by the pattern that begins to emerge, as if the universe itself was responding to your deepest questions. What makes the initial awakening so powerful is precisely its cascade effect. Once the first crack appears in the matrix of your beliefs, the light that penetrates through it illuminates other incongruities that previously went unnoticed. That's why Neo, after receiving the message on his computer, begins to notice other strange elements in his reality. The Law of One calls this phenomenon catalyst acceleration. When a being begins to awaken, the universe provides increasingly intense experiences to accelerate the process. It's as if consciousness itself, eager to reconnect with its source, begins to magnetize situations that challenge your previous limitations. It's not uncommon for people in the awakening process to report drastic changes in their lives, from job losses to relationship endings, as if the universe were removing everything that doesn't resonate with their path of evolution. Many interpret these changes as negative, when in fact they are just the cosmic energy reorganizing your life to accommodate a higher vibration. The mysticism found in ancient traditions has always recognized that the initial awakening often comes with discomfort and sleepless nights, exactly as Neo experiences. In the language of the Law of One, this occurs because Kundalini energy begins to rise, activating the higher energy centers while purifying blockages in the lower ones. Have you ever wondered why, precisely when you begin to question reality more deeply, it seems like your body and mind become more agitated? It's what ancient yogis called purification, the necessary process for bioenergetic systems to accommodate a more expanded consciousness. A simple practice to navigate this discomfort is conscious breathing. When you feel anxiety or insomnia during your awakening, try breathing deeply for 5 seconds, holding for 3, and exhaling for 7. Repeat this cycle for 5 minutes, focusing on the idea that this energy is simply rearranging your systems to accommodate a new understanding of reality. What many don't realize is that awakening, although it seems an individual, journey like Neo's is actually part of a collective awakening of humanity. The Law of One describes that our planet is transitioning from third to fourth density, a quantum leap in collective consciousness that is accelerating the individual awakening of millions of people simultaneously. It's as if the matrix itself were beginning to reveal its illusory nature on a global scale. Observe how, in recent decades, there has been an exponential growth of people interested in spirituality, expanded consciousness practices, and occult knowledge. Even theories once considered conspiratorial about the controlled nature of society are gradually entering the mainstream. This isn't coincidence, but rather the reflection of the matrix losing its cohesion as the planetary vibration rises. This collective awakening creates a support network for individual journeys. So, unlike Neo, who had only a small group of rebels, you have a global community of awakened people available to support your journey. The question that remains is, now that you've received your own cosmic wake up, what will your next choices be? Man, is there a more iconic scene in modern cinema than that moment when Morpheus extends his hands, offering Neo the choice that would change not only his life, but his fundamental understanding of reality? You take the blue pill. The story ends, you wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. This isn't just a dramatic cinematic choice, it's the decisive moment that every human being faces in their journey of awakening. The Law of One describes this exact moment as the point of polarity choice, when an entity consciously decides whether they will dedicate themselves to the positive path of service to others or the negative path of service to self. The fascinating thing is that the social matrix itself was designed to make this choice as difficult as possible, offering countless blue pills in the form of distractions, material comforts, and false securities that keep us asleep. The genius of the pill analogy lies in its radical simplicity. There are no middle grounds in this choice. Either you commit fully to the search for truth, no matter how uncomfortable it may be, or you remain in the illusory world built for you. In the Law of One, this moment of choice comes with a warning similar to Morpheus. Once you begin to see beyond the veil, there's no way to unsee. Consciousness, once expanded, never returns to its original size. Think about the people you know who have taken their version of the red pill, perhaps through a profound spiritual experience, an encounter with sacred plants, or a moment of devastating existential insight. Isn't it true that they never looked at reality the same way again? Their eyes carry both a deeper wisdom and a certain melancholy, the price of seeing the matrix for what it really is. Those who consciously choose the red pill know they're committing to a path that, although liberating, will initially be lonely and full of challenges. The contrast between Neo and Cypher perfectly represents the two possible paths after glimpsing the truth. Neo chooses to move forward, facing the discomfort of raw reality to eventually transcend it, while Cypher, unable to bear the truth, prefers to return to the comfortable illusion. In the terminology of the Law of One, Neo follows the path of service to others, accepting his role in the collective awakening, while Cypher exemplifies service to self, prioritizing his personal comfort at any cost. What makes this choice so poignant is that both paths are understandable. Who wouldn't feel Cypher's temptation when saying ignorance is bliss, while savoring a fake steak in the matrix? The energy of the social matrix specializes in offering us small, immediate satisfactions in exchange for our continued submission. A powerful exercise is to consciously observe your own daily negotiations with Cypher. Those moments when you perceive the truth about some aspect of the system, but choose to ignore it in the name of convenience. Not to judge yourself, but to honestly recognize the compromises we make with illusion. The mysticism present in the pill scene goes beyond the obvious. Notice how Morpheus doesn't try to convince Neo of anything. He simply offers the choice. True spiritual masters have always operated this way, understanding that free will is sacred and consciousness cannot be forced to awaken. The Law of One emphasizes that the choice must be made freely to have karmic validity. That's why, paradoxically, The more someone tries to convert others to their path of awakening, the less effective they become. True awakening can only be offered as an invitation, never as an imposition. Experiencing this principle in your own life can be revealing. The next time you feel the urge to forcefully wake someone up, try simply living your truth in a radiant way, allowing your elevated energy to naturally create curiosity in others. Like Morpheus, become an offerer of choices, not an imposer of truths. This posture not only respects others' free will, but also aligns your own energy with the natural flow of expansive consciousness. The red pill represents something even deeper, the willingness to let go of everything you thought you knew. In an authentic spiritual journey, as in the Law of One, true progress often requires what mystics call the dark night of the soul, a period when your most fundamental beliefs are deconstructed to make way for a higher understanding. This process is rarely comfortable. As a Zen master would say, if you meet the Buddha on the road, kill him, meaning that even our highest spiritual conceptions eventually become limitations that need to be transcended. The path of enlightenment isn't a comfortable accumulation of new beliefs, but a systematic dissolution of all mental constructs that obscure the direct perception of unified reality. The question that remains for every sincere seeker is, are you really willing to give up your mental comfort zones to discover what exists beyond them? Because the most difficult matrix to transcend isn't the external one, but the one you've built yourself and now fiercely defend as if it were your identity. When confronted with your own version of Morpheus, offering the final choice between comfort and truth, what will you choose? Wow, that moment when Neo finally sees the Matrix for what it really is, no longer as realistic images, but as streams of digital code that he can manipulate at will. This is possibly the highest point of the protagonist's journey, and perfectly represents what millennial spiritual traditions call enlightenment or illumination. It's that transformative instant when consciousness finally transcends the illusion and recognizes the true nature of reality. In the language of the Law of One, this is the moment of harvest, when a being reaches sufficient vibration to pass from one density to another, recognizing itself as an inseparable part of the infinite creator. The beauty of this analogy lies in how Neo not only recognizes the illusion, but learns to operate it from within, bending supposed physical laws and manifesting abilities that seem supernatural to those still trapped in the Matrix. Ancient mysticism texts described nothing different when they spoke of siddhis, seemingly miraculous powers that naturally arise when consciousness expands beyond the veil of separation. The fascinating thing is that Neo's moment of enlightenment doesn't transform him into an ethereal being, disconnected from material reality. On the contrary, he becomes even more effective within it, but from a completely new level of operation. Similarly, the Law of One doesn't suggest that awakening takes us away from material life, but allows us to experience it from an expanded consciousness that transcends its apparent limitations. How many times have we heard the misconception that spirituality means renouncing the world, when in fact it means engaging with it more deeply and consciously? A practical exercise to experience a glimpse of this transcendence is the observer meditation. For 10 minutes daily, observe your thoughts, emotions, and physical sensations without identifying with them. Notice that there is a pure awareness that witnesses all these experiences without being affected by them. This awareness is the equivalent of Neo seeing the code beyond the simulation. It's your true nature, observing the running program without being limited by it. When Neo finally confronts Agent Smith with new understanding, we see a perfect representation of what happens when someone reaches an elevated state of consciousness. The same challenges that previously seemed insurmountable are now recognized as illusory constructions with no real power. In the language of the Law of One, this represents the moment when a being understands that the distortions, limitations of reality have no inherent power beyond that which our own belief grants them. The agents within the Matrix are perfect analogues for what some spiritual traditions call guardians of the threshold. Those forces, internal and external, that seem to oppose our growth, but in reality only test our resolution and understanding. It's fascinating how people who reach elevated states of consciousness often report that their greatest life challenges don't magically disappear, but are recontextualized from such an expanded perspective that they lose their oppressive power. Have you noticed how problems that seemed enormous 5 years ago now seem insignificant? Imagine this same transformation happening in real time as your consciousness expands. The deepest aspect of Neo's enlightenment is his ability to literally see through the illusion, perceiving the underlying energy that composes everything. The masters of the Law of One describe a similar ability, the capacity to perceive that all matter is, in fact, condensed light, vibrating at different frequencies, and that all separation is illusory. This isn't just esoteric philosophy. Modern quantum physics essentially suggests the same thing. Try this perception exercise. Look at any solid object near you right now. Instead of seeing it as a separate thing, try to perceive it as a field of energy vibrating at a certain frequency, temporarily configured in this particular form. If you practice this regularly, moments of insight will come when you will momentarily see beyond the apparent solidity of objects, getting a glimpse of the ocean of unified energy that occult knowledge has always pointed to as the true nature of reality. These moments, although initially brief, are seeds of an expanded perception that gradually becomes your normal state of being. What makes Neo's enlightenment so inspiring is that it doesn't occur by chance or luck. It's the direct result of his dedication to the path of truth, despite all obstacles. Similarly, the Law of One emphasizes that awakening to higher densities isn't an arbitrarily granted gift, but the natural result of consistent choices aligned with an increasingly unified understanding of reality. The great revelation is that the Matrix never had real power over Neo beyond that which he himself granted through his belief in its limitations. When he finally understands this, a radical inversion occurs. Instead of being a victim of the system, he becomes its master. This is perhaps the most liberating message for any truth seeker. The limits you experience aren't immutable external impositions, but constructions of consciousness that can be transcended through the expansion of that same consciousness. This also explains why, historically, those who control power systems have always tried to suppress knowledge that leads to individual awakening. An awakened being can no longer be controlled through illusions. The question that remains is, what happens after someone, like Neo, reaches this state of expanded consciousness? Does the path end with individual enlightenment, or is there a greater purpose for this transformation? Wow, what an amazing journey to follow Neo to his enlightenment. But the most profound aspect of both the Matrix film and Plato's cave myth isn't in the individual awakening. It's in that crucial moment when the hero, after achieving liberation, makes the conscious decision to return to help others. This is where the narrative transcends personal development and touches on the cosmic purpose of consciousness evolution. In the Law of One, this is a fundamental principle. The more an entity awakens, the greater its capacity and responsibility to serve as a catalyst for collective awakening becomes. It's no coincidence that the film doesn't end with Neo simply enjoying his freedom outside the Matrix, but with him returning to liberate minds still imprisoned. This seemingly altruistic act reveals a deeper understanding. In the true nature of unified reality, there is no other to be saved. All are extensions of the same infinite consciousness, experiencing different levels of illusory separation. The return to the cave is never an easy path. As Plato wisely observed, the one who returns to share truth often faces ridicule, resistance, and even hostility. Why? Because the social matrix has deeply rooted self-preservation mechanisms, and those still completely identified with it will perceive any threat to their paradigm as a personal attack. The Law of One describes this as the inertia of third density consciousness, the natural tendency to resist changes that challenge fundamental belief structures. That's why Neo, upon returning to the Matrix, finds the same agents more determined than ever to stop him. Similarly, anyone who begins to share truths that challenge social consensus will quickly discover that the system has antibodies. You noticed how people who begin to question official narratives about health, politics, spirituality, or even history are quickly labeled and marginalized. This isn't a random phenomenon, but a systematic response designed to maintain the cohesion of the consensual matrix. Despite these challenges, the return to the cave brings a reward that illuminated isolation could never offer: conscious participation in the great dance of cosmic energy. The Law of One describes the universe as an entity seeking to know itself through infinite perspectives, and each being who awakens and then helps others awaken creates a chain reaction of consciousness, expansion, that benefits all creation. It's like throwing a stone in a lake. The ripples spread infinitely, affecting the whole in ways the individual could never predict. There's a simple practice to experience this principle in your own life. Identify a gift, insight, or ability that emerged in you through your own awakening, and find a generous way to share it without imposing or evangelizing. Perhaps through art, meaningful conversations, a blog, or simply living as a higher vibrational example. Many people discover that, paradoxically, it's in the act of giving that they truly receive. Their own consciousness expands even more. Through service, creating a virtuous cycle of awakening. The mysticism present in the return to the cave is perfectly symbolized at the end of Matrix, when Neo literally flies, transcending the supposed physical laws of the simulated reality. This represents a profound spiritual truth recognized in the Law of One. When we return to serve from a state of enlightenment, we are no longer subject to the same limitations that previously restricted us. We operate under a different set of principles, not fighting against the matrix, but flowing through it with an understanding of its underlying mechanics. That's why genuine spiritual masters often demonstrate a paradoxical ability to be in the world without being of the world. They fully participate in everyday life while maintaining a consciousness that doesn't identify with its apparent limitations. A powerful exercise is to practice what Buddhists call beginner's mind, approaching familiar situations as if experiencing them for the first time, free from habitual conditioning. This simple practice begins to dissolve the automatic structures of the internal matrix, allowing a more conscious presence even in the most mundane circumstances. The most revolutionary aspect of the return to the cave is that it transforms the journey of awakening from an individualistic act into a mission of universal love. The Law of One describes love not as a sentimental emotion, but as the recognition of the underlying unity of all creation, the visceral understanding that the other is in fact another part of yourself, experiencing a different perspective. When Neo decides to face the agents again, it's not out of egoic heroism, but because he understood that his freedom isn't complete while others remain imprisoned. This is the transition of consciousness from fourth to fifth density in the Law of One, the expansion of compassion beyond the limits of the individual self. It's fascinating to observe how people on advanced paths of awakening often go through a similar transformation. The search, initially motivated by personal growth or even escape from suffering, gradually transforms into a profound call to serve collective evolution. The question that remains for each of us is, having glimpsed the truth beyond the matrix, how will we choose to use this expanded consciousness? Will we remain satisfied with our individual liberation, or, like Neo, will we recognize that our journey is only complete when we become catalysts for the great awakening happening on a planetary scale? You've just received a map to navigate beyond the matrix and return to the consciousness of the One. The question is, what will you do with this knowledge? Will you continue to live as a battery in a system that feeds on your vital energy, or will you take the red pill and begin your journey of awakening? Think for a moment. What if you could see beyond the artificial limitations that you've accepted as reality? What if your potential was infinitely greater than what you've been led to believe? The Matrix isn't just a movie concept. It's the structure of beliefs and conditioning that keeps your consciousness limited every day. Start today. Question a limiting belief. Practice seeing beyond appearances. Observe the patterns of the Matrix in your own life. What's your equivalent of the red pill that you need to take now? Share in the comments which insight impacted you the most and how you plan to apply it in your life. Your journey back to the One isn't just personal. It's part of the great collective awakening. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to continue this journey together. The Matrix is everywhere, but the choice to transcend it is yours.